Hello, everybody. Hi, Mark.
Hi, Kelly.
Thank you for joining us today.
I'm honored to be here. Thank you.
Everybody, this is Mark Crowley. He is the author of the book that we'll talk about today, The Power of Employee Well-Being. And this is our 52nd leadership book of the month. So,
Wow.
Yeah, it's a big honor to have you. So I want to say, how are you?
I'm actually great. Thank you for asking.
How are you really?
That's very funny you should say that. Someone's read the book. But
Yes.
I mean, when you said that, I immediately went to 𝗍𝗍𝗍𝗍𝗍, who's the CEO of General Dynamics Information Technology. I was like, how did you know that? I forgot it was in the book. So, but I'm actually really good today, so thank you.
Yes, good. I'm so glad to get to talk with you. Mark and I connected on Twitter, I don't know how many years ago, but we were on there 10 years at least, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I was excited. I know I had your first book as well, and was excited to get this and see it come out last year. And I'm excited to share it with our viewers. If you're joining live, we appreciate it. If you're watching later, we appreciate you. As you know, if you're a regular viewer, the whole focus of this is for leaders who invest in themselves today, so they're the greatest leaders tomorrow. So that's what we focus on, bringing the books that resonate and the authors, if we're lucky to get them to join us. My co-host Brett is not able to join us today, but we will just dive right in. So the book is called The Power of Employee Well-Being, Move Beyond Engagement to Build Flourishing Teams. You had me at Move Beyond Engagement. So
wow.
Yes, I appreciated all of that. But it is interesting with the timing, because leaders today are feeling the need and the pressure to move beyond engagement, to focus on more personal and the care. And there's also additional pressures on leaders today that's different than it had been in the past. So balancing all of that out, and the book gives, hits it with reality. It's not just fluff, and the data and the truth about it, and gives some practical tips. So we'll dive in, but I do want people to know about Mark in case you don't already. He is a leadership consultant, speaker, and workplace culture expert. He's been focused on human-centered leadership for a long time in employee well-being. And his podcast is Lead from the Heart. And I'll put the link to Mark's website here where you can get in touch with him and find all the links to connect with him as well. He worked in banking and in finance for 25 years. And you know that we like to have people that have the real experience, like I have in my corporate career as well. So not just somebody that read a book about leadership and then talks about it. And you did the research as well. Also interesting that you were with Washington Mutual at a time that was a tough time for them. You were still there then. In 2000, yeah. And I don't know if we have time to go into that too much, but certainly added to your leadership experience, and that you were named Leader of the Year there. So that was, I don't know how you felt about it at the time, but looking at that in that industry that isn't known for human-centered leadership and for caring, that was pretty impressive. I was happy to see that. And yeah, I appreciate you being one of the few that was interested in pursuing that kind of leadership in that that industry back then even. Let's see, what else do I have? Inc. Magazine 2025, Top Leadership and Management, the Top 50. And let's see. I think a lot of recognition, regular contributor to Fast Company, also been in USA Today, Huffington Post, Seattle Times, Thrive Global, Reuters, Great Place to Work, and Gallup. And I really appreciated that you included a lot of data in support of why we need to move beyond engagement. What prompted you to take that leap? Because engagement was such a buzzword, and it took years for people to just welcome, get used to that word. Years ago, when I started talking about it, 25 years ago, managers would practically throw things at me that they didn't see it as their job, and they didn't like it. And so getting them to even warm up to engagement was a hurdle. And then I totally agree moving beyond it. But what propelled you to write the book?
Lots of questions there.
Sorry.
That's all right. Well, let me go back and just tell you that, I don't think that it was a choice for me. It was instinctual to manage. From the time that I started managing people, I was somebody who really wanted to support people, and without going into the why, because there was a why that influenced me to, like it changed my wiring and influenced me to pivot in a way that no one else was. But I spent my entire career caring greatly about the people who work for me and also setting very high expectations. And my teams always performed remarkably. And so I just kept getting promoted, and not really looking under the hood to say, well, what is it that I'm doing that's influencing people this way? And that I finally, the Washington Mutual experience was that I was the national sales manager for running sales, marketing, and communications for the brokerage business, stocks and bonds, and all the people selling them across 4,200 branches across the country. And I was named leader of the year. And then the company started having some financial problems. They made some bad decisions, but it was caught up in the Great Recession. And so Chase ended up coming into the organization, and I decided after about 7-8 months that it just wasn't the right environment for me. So I left with the intention of going and doing something else. But I decided to write a book, and that's the first one, the red one, if you can see that. And that was Lead from the Heart. And basically what I was saying in that, and I basically found research that validated my whole approach to leading people. It was, I didn't say, I wonder if this worked. I already knew it worked. I just needed the science to validate it so people would take me seriously. And so it's called Lead from the Heart because the body is feeling and sensing all the time, and including the heart, and it's sending communication to the brain. The brain's making sense of this. So we're not rational beings. So I've been basically advocating for humane leadership, which is to say that we should be caring about how people feel, because feelings drive up to 95% of our behavior. Then why are we paying so much attention to what they think when we should be thinking about how do we make them feel in a certain way, because the positive feelings are going to influence them to succeed and perform. And that's what I already knew to be true, right? So the answer to your question was that from the point that I wrote the book, there was a lot of misunderstanding or misinterpretation or cynicism. You hear the word heart, people immediately go, oh, he's a nut or a spiritualist, or somebody who doesn't understand business. I heard all of that.
Yeah.
The world wasn't ready for that. So I started writing, and then ultimately started my podcast so that people could drip through the articles, hear me on the podcast, talking to very legitimate, world-class people, and walking away saying, hey, he's not insane. He actually makes a lot of sense. That was the strategy. But I started working with Gallup, and not only with Gallup, but the person who actually created the engagement study 29 years ago, and their well-being study, which is no coincidence, by the way. And so we started writing articles together. And like, I was the first one, literally in the world. I wrote an article for Fast Company. Gallup gave me permission to announce that only 30% of Americans were engaged in their jobs. And I'm like, holy cow, that's ridiculous. This is awful. We need to fix this and all of that. And so we wrote articles together, and I wrote a second edition to the book, and Gallup gave me updated information. Like, they were very, very supportive of what I was doing. And so I built like a credible voice out there. But here's what happened. This is the answer to your question. I got an email from Gallup about less than 2 years ago, and maybe, a year and a half ago, something like that. And I opened it up, and it says engagement in America fell to an 11-year low. And I was like, huh? Like, how could that be? Like, it was already so low. And I've been tracking it for many years outside of it, but I kind of imagined it was going to go, up. And so 11-year low, that got my attention. So next thing I did was to open up the email. And I'm looking at the numbers, and the numbers were exactly what they were 12, 13 years ago when I wrote article for Fast Company, and instantaneously said, this is stupid. Like, no one's, I literally, that was my impulse. It was like, why are we talking about this anymore? No one ever took it seriously. So I went out on Twitter. I've got a big following, as you know, and so I went out on Twitter and I go, give me your number one reason why engagement didn't work. And everybody came back with the exact same answer. There was never any accountability. It was all window dressing. It was all superficial. So Gallup keeps coming out, and this was the only metric that we had, right? This was the only one that we could get our hands on, and it all adds up. It's just too complicated, and companies were succeeding without it, so they didn't have to worry about it, right?
Right.
So they didn't. So the move beyond engagement part is in the title, is implying stop talking about engagement. There's something more important. So the next step was, and this was sort of like the gods coming to me. This is the way I saw it, because very soon after, so I'm saying, time to just throw engagement away. We need to stop the surveys because we're annoying people. Nothing's ever been done with it. People are getting sick and tired of it. I told you, I spilled my guts. You didn't do anything. I'm still working for this awful manager. So I'm saying move aside, put that aside. But then I found research that showed, that was remarkable, really, that basically said that employee well-being, a simple question of how do you feel at the end of your work week, one simple question, drives performance on a consistent basis week to week. So if people collectively say green, everything's good, I'm happy, their performance and all their key metrics went up. If they're red, things are toxic, people are really unhappy or angry, performance drops. And that's all I needed, because I'm all about feelings and emotions, believing that that's what's driving performance. The well-being study is just simply asking people, how do you feel? And they can pinpoint performance all the way to stock performance. So I went to Oxford, met with the economist who did the research, and then came back and wrote the book and said, stop engagement. We need to focus on employee well-being. And it's so simple, but here's something really important. Engagement has always been the self-serving thing. Right? Companies have wanted it. So it's like, hey, Kelly, my goal for you is so that you're more engaged. And what does that mean? It means you're going to work harder and put in more discretionary effort for no more pay.
Right. Yes.
Whereas
Terrible.
If I say to you, Kelly, I want to help you with your well-being while you're working here, we have a win-win. Because I already know it's going to drive greater performance, but don't you want greater well-being, right? So I'm looking at it, and it was like, I'm putting these pieces together, and I just couldn't wait to write the book. And so the book basically explains, move on from it. Here's why we need to focus on well-being. It's a very compelling argument. It's very simple. You can pulse people. You can ask simple questions. How do you feel about your manager? Do you feel that your manager's caring and supportive? And within an hour, you've got all the feedback and you can do something with it, right? With engagement, it took months before it got there and no one ever did anything. And then on top of it, they threw in, so it's like, oh, hey, everyone, we're going to be doing our engagement study. Oh, what's that? Oh, well, we're going to ask 12 questions. Oh, well, could you ask them about the parking lot? Do they like the parking? Pizza Fridays, are they happy with that? And so you're getting all this complication and nothing's ever done with it. It's like, oh, I guess they don't like the Pizza Fridays. Well, okay, but that's not what this was all about. This was the intention was to improve the conditions that people are working in. So the book basically teaches managers, now that you've bought into it, which I hope that people have, you're going to wonder, well, what do I do to support well-being? And that's what the book is about.
Yeah. And I think, did you work with any clients or get any feedback where they, not only was the engagement self-serving, but the employees figured that out and then mocked the company?
Oh yeah. No. But they got beyond
no
mocking.
Trust.
It's a progression of, okay, we'll participate in this. This could help us.
Yeah.
Nothing happens. And they go, huh. And then they do the survey again and nothing happens. And then they go, well, why are they asking us? This is annoying. And then they do it a third time. And now they're pissed off.
Yes.
Stop asking me this because you're not going to do anything with it. And I resent you for doing this. And it's not trusting. It's all of the things that actually make engagement worse, which I find.
Yes.
you know.
And the company's feedback when they would get the results and they get the data, and the companies would complain, the management team would complain about the people that said things in the comments. So then they'd try to figure out who was saying things.
Who do you think that is? Is that Kelly? You know, Kelly's a pain in the neck. I bet she's the one who said this. And then the manager goes or, you know, this was a common thing that happened. You either have the manager saying, hey, we're going to be doing the surveys and you better give good grades. Like, you know, we don't need any trouble around here. Or what they did was they conflated that a 4 and a 5 are the same. So I hear people say to me all the time, hey, we have like 92% engagement. I'm like, no, you don't. No, you don't. There's people who give you a 4 are choosing to not give you a 5 for a reason, right? So blending those together and saying they're all the same is just a head fake, you know?
Right.
So anything that we can do to not improve how we lead is pretty much what the last 15 years is like. That's the way I'm looking at this.
And to be in denial about the people are people and that they matter. And what is your legacy as a leader? That's what I've talked with a lot of leaders about as an executive coach and working in culture is what do you want your legacy to be? You know, when you're 95 knocking on pearly gates somewhere, nobody cares about your Wall Street numbers anymore. And so what are people going to remember about you as a leader? And people can tell if you care about them or not.
It's interesting because I've met people where that works, like they care about that. Like, and for me, I can tell you, without necessarily ever waking up and saying, I want to create my own legacy by behaving in a certain way. By behaving a certain way, I did create a legacy. And so I know the impact that I've had on people. And as you say, that really is more powerful than anything else I've ever done, is hearing from people saying, I just want to remind you of the impact you had on my life, and what I learned from you. That's invaluable. But not everybody's motivated like we are.
Right.
So I would say, even if you're the most selfish person and all you care about is your performance, by the way, I don't think you should be in leadership if you're that way. And I actually make that point in the book.
Yeah.
But let's just say that you don't care about your legacy. I'll be dead, so what do I care? In the time that you're alive and you're managing people and you're accountable for performance, supporting well-being is the single most effective way of getting there.
It is. So how do you talk with leaders that that feel more pressure to have a say in the personal aspect of people? You know, there's the employees today expect management to care about them and their mental health and their well-being. That was different 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. Early in my career, I had a coworker who was higher level than me, but not my manager. But he's told me, cut the happiness crap. Like, don't bring any emotions to work, not even happy ones. You know, and
nobody understands this better than I do, because I've been in a position to. I could have called Lead from the Heart something very killer. I was encouraged to call it killer engagement. Everybody can get around that. But what I'm saying in that book is that there's science. The common thread between both of these books is that when you care about someone and they feel that, they want to reciprocate. That's the truth. So killer engagement goes back to, a head fake. It's like, hey, leader, here's how you can manipulate your employees to get more out of them, right? That's not what my message is. My message is, if you care about people, they're going to be naturally inclined to support you because they're grateful to you. And who doesn't want to be supported? So I'm going to, I've used this language. People scaled mountains for me over the years because they were so grateful for what I did for them. I made them feel safe. I saw their potential. I helped grow it. I coached them. I developed them. I'd think about them. I'd read a book. I go, hey, I just read this. Here's a summary. This has you all over it. I'm doing all this at the same time that I'm setting up expectations, but people are getting promoted. They're seeing their peers get promoted. They're like, I want to work with this guy. So the real thing here is that it drives performance in a way that's natural. you're not manipulating anyone as long as you're doing it with integrity. If you're trying to support, if I say to you, hey, Kelly, I want to support your well-being, and you go, why? Well, I hear it'll help me. It's like, okay, game over. I want to help you because that's a win-win. That's what you need. And we know this. Like there's tons of research that's in both of the books that basically show that the first thing is that generationally, so if you're a boomer or even in Gen X, there was sort of the assumption that when you come to work, you're gonna have to suck it up to whatever they give you. I'll speak in the vernacular. You have a shitty boss who doesn't care about you, who makes your life miserable. That's just the breaks, right? Well, in going back to the Great Recession, this was the first pivot point. Companies laid their employees off in an instant, to save their bottom lines, never even thinking about what the implication was to people. We're just going to lay thousands of people off. So the generation coming up behind it, Gen Y, they saw that and they were like, why the hell am I ever going to want to work hard for a company because I watched my mom work till 11 o'clock at night. I watched my dad work until, all weekend long. They didn't go to my games because they were giving everything to this company. And now you just let them go. So they came in saying, I'm not doing this. Right. Well, then you had COVID. And what happened in COVID was fascinating to me in the sense that I predicted it and it went exactly the way I predicted it, which was once I understood that we were going to get through it, and then it was just a matter of you're going to get the remedy for it. We'll all take it. And ultimately life's going to go on. I started thinking about, well, what are people doing right now? Because remember, you could only be with your pod or, seeing your family. And if your parents were in a hospital, you couldn't go to see them and all the restrictions. So, we're masking to go into the Home Depot, all the things that we were doing. So we stopped socializing with people. What were we doing? Well, besides streaming Netflix, we had a lot of time to think about our lives. Am I married to the right person? Am I in the right relationship? Am I doing the right work that I should be doing? Do I work for a company that cares about me and supports me? Is this where I want to be? And interestingly, from the time that we reopened up offices, for the next 18 months, 20% of Americans. So this is a year after COVID started. We opened up offices. Not everybody went back all at once, but everybody was back to the idea that you could go back to the office. 20% of Americans quit their job in the next 18 months. Why? Because they were waiting for it. As soon as I can, I'm getting the hell out of there. That was the first sign that people were, I want something much more significant for my life. And that means that people are coming into work with expectations. I apologize.
That's okay.
That people should have expectations that are far different than any generation before. Because if they were alive when the Great Recession hit, they saw the pain that their parents went through and that influenced them. But COVID influenced us all. So I don't care if you're 80 years old and you're still working, if you're going to work every day, it can't just be for a paycheck. Life is too short.
And we're seeing that now with the data where the Gen Zs they don't aspire to be in the leadership roles.
Well, I mean, have we made it look attractive?
No.
Anything to make that worthwhile?
No.
I'm actually going through this right now with a client where somebody left at a particular level, and there is a person that is completely qualified to be in that and to be promoted. And the compensation isn't all that much difference. But what he sees when he looks around is whatever differential in pay, is that going to be worth it to me? And so they're going to him now. They're saying, would you please take this? As opposed to, I will take this because I've mastered my job and I'm ready for a promotion. He's like, why would I want to do that? That's not, so, and I don't know if this person's going to take the job or not. But then that means that somebody less experienced will take it. And so you're weakening your organizations because people that have the talent to do it don't want to do it.
Right.
My big picture here is like, why don't we look at ourselves and say, what have we done to create this reaction, instead of going, these stupid Gen Zers, they're whatever, their liberal attitudes or whatever brandishing we want to give them. You're missing the point.
Yes.
They have a life experience that has been in response to what they've seen. So if you don't like the outcome, change the environment, change the conditions. We're going to create an environment where we're going to support you so that you feel better about the organization, that you feel better about giving more. We're not saying we're going to force you into a promotion, but we're going to create an environment that's going to be so cool for you that, you might want to.
Yeah.
And we have done that, so you look at Oracle, for example, which is my poster child, along with Meta right now, for anti-lead from the heart. This is lead from the head, and lead without any humanity. People say human-based leadership. I don't. Because the human aspect is what has made us as bad leaders as we are, because the human aspect wants everything to come from here. And the humane side, the best aspects of humanity come from here. So to be empathetic, to be compassionate, to be thoughtful, to be patient, to be lenient with people when they make a mistake, to give people a voice, to give them social, psychological, and emotional safety. None of that comes from up here.
Right.
So you've got Oracle that laid off 30,000 people with a 5 a.m. email and told people, hey, I know you've been here for 20 years, but your career is over here. Goodbye. Nothing. That's it. You don't get to come back in and say goodbye to your staff, your team, people you've worked with. You don't get a party. You don't get a thank you. You don't get acknowledgement for the 20 years you've been here. And I've used the word cruel, but it's like, nobody in their heart would ever make a decision to do that. And this is what's going on in our world today. And so if we don't change it, we're just going to create the most dystopian place for all of us. If we just let AI run its course and let use the tools to do harm, we will eliminate 30% of the jobs. And what's that going to do for us? You're going to have the most horrible place to live, because people aren't working, they're not being fulfilled, they don't matter anymore, they're not contributing, they're not growing, they're just getting $1,000 a month. I don't see this as being a solution. And I just read in the Wall Street Journal today, interestingly, that I think I want to say vice chairman, but he's like the number 2 guy in China. And he sat down with some of the technology people and he said, tell me what we can expect from AI. And they were talking about the positive things first, like, here's what we think we can do with it. And then they said, well, we think it could probably eliminate up to 30% of the jobs in the whole country of China. And the guy goes, I'm going to ask you not to do that.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you to take a different point of view on this. Find a way to make the tools better to help people, not to eliminate them. We're not doing that here. We're not doing that here. We're just letting it happen. 30,000 people in one day in a 5 a.m. email. Can you imagine what people's sleep patterns were? And Meta did the exact same thing. They're telling people, hey, if you want to find out whether you still have a job tomorrow, wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and read the email and see if your name's on it. This is like unprecedented.
Yeah.
And it's anti-well-being. But we're not doing ourselves any service by leading this way.
And then let's have free pizzas on Friday with the people that are left, like that.
I don't know how you can be
ridiculous.
But look, people, if you want a transactional workforce, if you want people to just get up and walk out the door, and when they find another job, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So if you think you treat people this way and not expect them to behave in the same way. So it's like, if I quit, you go, well, aren't you going to give me two weeks notice? You didn't give those 30,000 people 2 weeks notice. Well, why the hell are you asking me for it? How dare you? Is that what we want?
And transition the work. They're not going to transition. Right. The company should be treated.
But we're not voicing our disapproval of it loud enough. And I'm trying to personally.
Well, I am going to join you in that, because yes, I've often said about some companies have layoffs every quarter to meet their Wall Street numbers. And And I've said, if that's the way you meet numbers consistently is by having layoffs, then you suck as a leader and need to step aside.
100%.
Mm-hmm. So for the ones that are interested, one thought too, when the companies continue having the 30,000 layoffs at 5 a.m, and if they do veer toward that style of leadership, the ones who will overtake them, their competitors who do it the way we talk about, those are the ones that are going to win. So they're going to win in the marketplace because they're going to win with people.
I don't think the problem here is that the people that are doing this are the people who are creating AI. And so it's very seductive to say, we're letting 30,000 people go in an email and screw those people. We don't care what they contributed, but they're gone. And imagine the savings that we're going to have by cutting out all that, right? So if you're a CEO in oil or pharmaceuticals or any business, and a salesperson from Meta comes to you and says, we've created this technology and we just completely fired 30,000 people, right? Or Oracle.
Yeah.
You can do the same thing and imagine what your shareholders will say. So I think this is like a gimmick. I think this is a way to sell, they're investing hundreds of billions of dollars a year in this, all of them. And I think they're looking for, how do we get our money back? The way we're going to get our money back is for companies to buy the AI technology so that they can eliminate thousands of jobs to pay for it, right? And never have to replace those jobs so that the savings are perpetual. Like I think this is the big sales pitch. And I'm saying, if that's what you want in this world, I mean, so far it does shock me that there's been so little outcry from people saying, you realize this is really wrong, right? Like, we're never in the history if we intentionally destroyed jobs because we thought technology could do them. We at least tried to make them help people. I mean, there are certain jobs, people used to put cans, like filling milk bottles and stuff. That obviously 150 years ago, that was done, without automation, and automation has clearly taken jobs. But we haven't started off with, oh man, this technology, wait till you see how many people you can fire. That's how this is being sold.
Yeah.
And I think that you're right in the sense that the companies that are saying, we're not going to be that way. We're not going to manage with fear. We need you to learn this technology, but we're not having you learn it to train your replacement.
Right.
We're teaching you this because this is a tool that's going to make you more effective. And if you can use it and become more effective, your chances of staying here are much higher.
Yes, because you can do other things. There's more to these people. Yes. Yeah. I think that's what they're missing. And the same Wall Street Journal has articles every day about how companies are not seeing the return on their investment in AI. And so they need to do things differently, and how they're leading it and overseeing it and governing it and who's responsible for it, and just including it. And so laying people off because it might reduce jobs later, that's not going to serve them well in the long term.
Well, I think so again, it's different because the companies that are doing this, Google, Microsoft, Oracle, Meta, Amazon, they're spending billions of dollars. It's an existential situation for them. So one of those companies won't be here 10 years from now. I don't know which one, and maybe not. But the likelihood is one of them is going to figure this AI thing out better than anybody else, and they're going to dominate the way Google did 25 years ago. Mm-hmm. That'll be it, right? Do you remember Ask Jeeves? There were all these different, right? There were all these different places that you could go, and then all of a sudden Google got 90% of all the search volume, and all those companies went away. That could very well happen here. So what's happening is the companies are spending all of this money. So Microsoft and Google were one of the first ones to do it. They were like, we're going to spend all this money. We can't spend it without saving. So where can we cut? So it became people, right? Mm-hmm. So they're setting the example for everyone else to follow. But not everybody else is going to spend hundreds of billions of dollars to do this. It should be that You buy a computer. You don't fire the person. You keep the person to use the computer, right? You do both. So the investment that these companies have to make in AI is nothing like Microsoft and Google are putting into it, because they're trying to own the world. But they're setting this example that I'm afraid CFOs particularly are looking at this and they're like, huh, what would it be like? What would our P&L look like, if we cut off 30% of the people? It would, the profitability alone would be amazing if you could cut 30% of any corporation in this country. So it has all this appeal, but who's the moral voice? Who's the enlightened voice saying, hold your horses, don't get so greedy here. AI itself is going to save you money. AI itself is going to make you money. Don't jump the shark here and think you're going to get the whole enchilada here, right? That's the perspective that I think people need to have.
Part of me also thinks that the reason they're saying that layoffs are because of AI is because they overhired during COVID. And I remember thinking of all these companies that you mentioned, a lot of them hired so many people during COVID because of the technology needs, and people working from home was different than in the office. And I remember thinking, just myself in Kansas City, not connected to them or anything, but I was thinking, wow, they're really hiring a lot of people. And the pandemic will end one of these days.
This was another selfish thing. The motivation of doing that wasn't just to hire people. What they were trying to do was to beat each other out for talent.
At
the end of the day, there's a limited pool of people. They're in India, they're in China, and they're at UC Berkeley and Stanford and MIT, right? The people that are working in Silicon Valley are coming from those places. So for the most part, right, that's the orientation. So there's a limited pool. So Google and Meta, they started buying up people to compete, and then woke up and said, wait a minute, we have this ridiculous number of people here. So again, they make the leadership mistake, and then they fire all the people because of the mistake that they made. The other thing that they did was completely disingenuous, was to say, we're laying these people off because of AI. There was no evidence that AI was working to do any of the jobs. They did it so that they could, because they knew that nobody was sophisticated enough to be able to go, well, is AI working well enough that you could do this? We just rolled over and played dead and go, oh, wow, my God, AI is already taken, 10,000 people. Like, that's incredible. We all just bought it. It's only because of data that's come back that showed that people that have done nothing, just, wait and see, their stock performance hasn't done anything different than the people that have bought AI. It's not going to be long before somebody, the king has no clothes, right? We're going to wake up and we're just going to go, we're not spending another dollar until we know that this is really working. Right.
And they said the sooner the better, And how they're making decisions in alignment with their values, which was a big part of your book too. What are their core values, and how much money do they need, and what are they doing with the money? And, how many yachts does somebody need? How many homes?
Interestingly, Gallup just came out today and said that people's assessment of our ethical values as a country is at an all-time high, meaning the inverse is true, that like 57% of Americans think that we've lost touch with values, and 80% think it's going to get worse.
Wow.
So it's the thing is, it's all on us. Do you want to live in a world where there's no ethics and people in government can do whatever they want to, and can bring in all kinds of bad behavior, even criminal behavior, and we're okay with it? And it's like, oh, that's okay because they're on our side, whatever side you're on, we can rationalize that. Or do you want to say, you know what, nobody with that kind of a background should be in a political position or a business leadership position because they've demonstrated a lack of integrity, a lack of trust, and we don't want that. And that's not what we're doing right now. We're just rationalizing away some of the worst behavior, and we're allowing it to happen. And it's catching up. I think people are just growing in a very positive way, so that I'm not sounding negative. If you have this pendulum, we're out of frame now, right?
Right.
But we're all getting pretty tired of it. We're all weary of it. And as it comes back, the idea of what do we do to create an environment where people actually want to work, then, it's finally here from Mark Crowley. It's like, I mean, I literally wrote Lead from the Heart 15 years ago. Came out July of 2011. So that's how long I've been advocating for this, with great detail, great research, and not woo-woo, nothing. It's all science. Care about your people, and they will perform for you and drive performance in your organization in ways you'll never imagine. And we've just resisted because we think, nope, fear works better, intimidation works better, keeping a little bit of a noose around people and jerking it every once in a while. We think that's the way to keep people in line and keep them performing. And it's all it does is build anger and resentment, and people want to leave, and they're not going to contribute at their highest level. And they're certainly not going to be at home on the weekend going, oh, I think if I spent an hour, I think I could figure out that problem at work. They're going to go, screw that. I'm going to the park. I'm going to the ball game. I'm not doing that, and the lost opportunity, going back to the beginning of the conversation, the idea of engagement should never go away. Are you not 12-question engagement, but are you engaged? Like, are when you come, are you excited to be here? You love doing what you're doing? You can't wait to get to it. That's my definition of engagement.
Yeah.
And why would anybody feel that way the way we continue to lead? I just, people do it because they want to keep their jobs and they want to keep their income coming in. But that's motivated by fear more than anything. And you can't live in that world for very long without it taking you down, making you sick. This is why mental health issues are so horrible right now. And, so we're seeing all the signs. All the signs are there. It's just going to be a tipping point where everybody wakes up at the same time and says, we can't do this anymore.
And I think that's happening to all layers of employment. So it's not only the lower level that is feeling that. Leaders are feeling that too. Leaders are feeling like they want to be cared about. They're not doing extra on the weekends and thinking about it.
Yeah. And in fact, they're putting so much expectation on them that, sometimes they're saying, well, how do I have time to support other people's well-being?
Right.
Mine isn't supported. But it goes back to that question of, why would I want to be a leader when that's such a shitty proposition, right? So if you want to keep people promoting, you're going to have to find a way to take care of your leaders and not just exploit them. And that's sort of the mindset right now. Exploit people as much as you can. And I mean, the CEO of Standard Chartered Bank in Great Britain basically laid off people, and he called them inferior human capital. Like, like what? Who talks like that about their employees, right?
No.
We got rid of them because they weren't performing. So they're like, inferior human capital. No, they're people. They're human beings, right? And he didn't care. Like he had an opportunity. He apologized, but he was like, nah, not really. I meant what I meant. These are all just people. They're just pieces on a piece of paper. They're really they mean nothing to me, and they never will mean anything to you. And I'm like, why do we put people in positions like that? Why would a board put somebody in a position like that? Because it's greed. We think that guy is going to go treat people really badly. I know of an organization where the most senior person is reporting to an ownership group, and they know this person is massively toxic. And so every once in a while, they'll talk to the employees like, oh, is, so-and-so, is he being hard on you? Is it too much to take? And people are like, yeah, this is killing me. And they go, oh, okay, but they're like, they go back to that guy and go, keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, he's meeting the numbers.
Everybody's on board with it. It's all about money. It's all about, and they don't understand and aren't willing to believe that everything that I'm saying is, if you treat people with respect. And that's not to say that work isn't hard. It's not to say that you don't set high goals or hold people accountable or fire people if they don't.
Right.
That all comes with it. But my experience is that when you care about people and you give them opportunities for growth and you promote people from within when they get to where they need to be to get that next level, that you're creating the system that people want to be a part of and they want to work hard for it because they know it's in their best interest. So everything takes care of itself. Everybody is winning. And the win-lose proposition is what we've been doing for 100 years. And it's just no longer sustainable.
No, and I think continuing to do that because you haven't been trained or you haven't had good role models, so you don't know how to have the hard conversations, how to hold people accountable, how to have those hard conversations with people. So then the leaders, managers will fall back to not having the hard conversation and just putting people on a performance improvement plan for 2 weeks and then firing them, or waiting until there can be a layoff and firing the whole group.
So lazy, you know?
Yeah. But the leaders and managers that do want to lead in a way that aligns with their core values and the truth of who they really want to be in this world, they can get some great tips from your book. It really makes it accessible. And I've had some pushback over the years where, all of a sudden now I have to have the capacity, the emotional capacity to care about more people. And I don't have room for it. But your book does make it more accessible with some of the strategies were bigger than others, but there's a lot of small nuances like how are you? How are you really? Even listening to people. That should just be a common practice, not to interrupt or turn it back to yourself.
You tell your audience that this was the CEO of a major firm, a multi-billion-dollar organization with 30,000 plus employees all over the world working in really serious stuff. And, I was at a meeting and I was there to speak and I got up on stage with her and she said, "How are you?" And I've got 300 people in the room and I go on and I had, the truth was my brother had died and I had just found out. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't well, but I had flown all the way from California to Washington, D.C. I wasn't going to not do what I was supposed to do. So I'm going to put that aside and I'm going to go in and do my job. And so she said, "How are you?" And I said, "I'm great." And then she goes, "How are you really?" And it was like, puncturing a balloon. It was like, I can't lie. I can't tell you, you triggered what's really happening inside of me. And so in front of all those people, I had to say that 20 minutes ago, I got a message that my brother died. And so I'm dealing with that right now. And they were incredibly empathetic. But it was like, what CEO does that? She's not, as it works out, I'm doing, I'm part of their family now, if you will. But, it could have been seen as transactional. "How are you, Mark?" "Great." "Okay, let's get to it. Tell us about your book," right? Instead, in front of 300 people, she's like, "Well, how are you really?" And I want to know, not realizing that there are 300 people out there. No, what she was demonstrating to the whole audience was, this is how I roll. This, right? When I talk to you, I'm going to ask you the same question. So be ready for it. And she does, it takes a second, but what it does and what it did for me, and, I could have hidden it. I literally made a conscious decision. It's like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Okay, I made the decision. I'm here. I'm going to do it. I'm just going to hide it and I'll deal with it afterwards. So if she had just said, "How are you?" I sailed through that.
Right.
And I sailed through the whole thing. She asked me, "How are you really?" I was like, I actually matter here. I'm more than just a paid speaker and an author to help your organization. You care enough to ask that question. You're demonstrating to me that there's some significant respect going on here. How does that make me feel in terms of wanting to do a wonderful job for her and for her organization? I would do anything for them.
Right.
Because of how she made me feel. Right. So there are people out there, to your point earlier, the companies that are out there that are determined to do this, And by the way, this is an organization that had a rather senior person take their own life. From that point forward, the CEO, she basically said, "Not on my watch. We're going to be all about caring about mental health and transparent and offering assistance and checking in on people and making leaders be aware of signs. And, like, it's brilliant.
Brilliant.
Right? It's just absolutely.
Pay attention to people. Notice them like she did with you. And I bet the impact you had that day was way better because she asked, "How are you really?" And you answered.
1,000%.
They're closer with each other. You would do anything for them. If they said, "Can you come out here tomorrow?" You'd fly across there tomorrow. You would do anything for them. So that's way better than if you did your regular prepared talk. And
completely.
It'll be great. Clicker.
Next slide, please.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh. Yeah, so good. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing all of this. And I think we answered I asked one question that I had prepared in advance, but the conversation was so useful and interesting. And I hope all of our viewers appreciate it as well. And feel free to post questions or ask them. I didn't even check during our conversation because I got so carried away, but we'll look and see if anybody posts and be glad to answer.
People can connect with me on LinkedIn too.
Yeah.
I'm Mark C. Crowley, and I post frequently, not only my podcast, but I write for Fast Company and Psychology Today now. So if anybody's interested in just hearing more about this, have them please reach out to me.
And join the movement of people that are living and leading in alignment with their values. So join that movement.
Well said. Thank you. That's it. I want a community oriented to do this work.
Yeah. And you can find out more about our leadership book of the month at voyagecg.com/leadership books. And next month, we'll talk about the book, The Confidence Map from Peter Atwater. So I will look forward to seeing everybody then. And we'll post a summary, post the links here for this broadcast on LinkedIn and YouTube. And we'll look forward to talking with you again, Mark, about your next book.
Thank you so very much. Thanks for the nudge.
Bye.